What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. We are in a little bit of a break. No F1 Fantasy, no races to kind of look forward to this week. So I want to do something a little bit different. A 2-week overreaction video with like some hot takes. What are we feeling after 2 weeks? That kind of thing. So I had to get on Zach, the final member of the Fantasy Formula. I've had Adam on, I've had Terry on. So Zach, you are the final piece of the puzzle. Welcome to F1 Fantasy. What is up, sir?
You've collected us all now. That's good to hear. Hello, everyone. I am Zach GP. As you heard, I am another F1 Fantasy content creator. In 2023, I came 7.5K in the world. 2024, 886th. That year was brilliant for me. And in 2025, let's try keep it going. But yeah, as you can see, my favourites at F1, Button will always have my heart. However, he retired ages ago. So now I've moved on from Button over to Norris. But yeah, you can find me over on Zach GP on my YouTube channel. Yeah, that's me.
Perfect, perfect. Glad to have you on. Yes, McLaren. I am also a McLaren fan, but because I
Hey.
usually do my videos with a green screen, I'm gonna wear my this shows up. This just turns into red when I use my green screen. So I'm gonna use the opportunity to wear my new Mercedes sweater that I bought in the off season. But yeah, Jensen, but I just watched the Braun GP documentary over on
Oh.
Disney Plus, I think is what it's on over here. So that
Mhm.
was fun to watch. But yeah, it's been great to follow your content, Zach. And yeah, last year you ran away with our little mini content creators league. So we are all gunning for you this year in 2025. But yeah, now you're on the Fantasy Formula with Adam and Terry. Great stuff. I've been watching all that. You guys have been crushing it. I love the new kind of formats you guys are putting out there and stuff like that. So if you're not following Fan App over there with the Fantasy Formula, definitely head over there and check those out. But we are here to do some 2-week overreactions. But Zach, as guest, I will let you kick things off.
Well, my first one is talking about taking hits to avoid DNF budget falls. And there is a reason to this, as we've seen in the first part of the season. I mean, myself, I've taken the wild card to get out of some of these budget decreases. And I really do think it will stay the same throughout the full season because there's such a big swing we've seen when, let's say, someone like Hulkenberg come to Japan, gets a DNF. All of a sudden, I'm going to be like, okay, get this guy instantly out of my team. And I would be happy to take that -20 or -10, even like I said, even a -20 at this point to get up to a better budget. Because, I mean, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but budgeting is going to be so important this season. And considering come to past Miami, which is where I'm sort of my plan is going for now, your budget could be so much better than a lot of other people if you're careful with this. So yeah, I really do think it's worth taking those hits.
Yeah, I think I agree. I like you. I actually just activated my wild card in China. I think I was on a -20. That was kind of on the fence there, but I was like, if I take a -20, there could be like in 2 weeks' time where I could take another -20. But I just want to
Mhm.
set myself up, get my budget back on track after China. But yeah, like you're saying, like now with this new pricing system, my plans have been a little bit scuppered. It was planned to like roll in Japan and then have 3 for Bahrain. But yeah, right now it's like, as you can see on the screen here, this is from a Medio from the F1 Fantasy Tools Discord. Thank you for letting me share this on here. We've got some options that we're going to have to be looking through, and like I'll zoom in on these. I've got a little bit of a hot take coming up in a little bit, but yeah, there's definitely some drivers to target. Like we can't go anywhere near Liam Lawson as of right now. We're not entirely sure what's going to go on with that situation, but yeah, like Fernando Alonso needs to score like over 64 points to become a 0.6 increase. That's not happening, stuff like that. But then you've got all these other drivers that we can easily get to. So yeah, taking the hits to get the budget is probably right, especially like to enable the thing about Antonelli rising to an A tier draft asset right now is that like he is not going to score anywhere near as many points as Piastri, right? In
Mhm.
F1 fantasy. So it's kind of like, okay, so you lose your budget appeal. So I have to move up to get to Piastri and I need to be able to enable that. So if that needs to be a hit, like at the end of the day, we win this game by scoring points. So you do have to kind of take that into consideration. But moving over to my hot take, and we're kind of still talking about the same thing. I think
Mhm.
managers are going to start liking this pricing system. So a big kind of bugaboo about last year's game and the pricing system, which was fun and like it was definitely more easy to understand than this year's pricing system was that those bottom of the barrel assets like the Logan Sargents, the Joe Guan Yu, the Valtteri Bottas, like there was no way they were going to move up in price bar like 3 DNFs in a race and a few overtakes. And I think this new pricing system is eventually going to incorporate most of the drivers in the game. So as you can see here, we have had some new info. In Australia, we were operating on the zero point 0.2, zero point 0.4, zero point 0.6, or 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 system. That has moved up in China. And right now, the like current theory in F1 fantasy community is that it's going to rise again for Japan, 0.6, 0.9, 1.2. We don't know this for sure. Like there is a kind of thought in the back of my brain that is that like the 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 like a Grand Prix weekend, and then the next threshold is like a sprint weekend. I don't really know, but we're kind of gonna wait and see how this all goes. Zach, how are you feeling like early returns on the new pricing system in F1 fantasy?
Well, I'll initially say I'll give it its credit where its credit's due. It's keeping us on our toes. That is 100% happening because I remember last year we basically knew straight away, okay, cheap drivers, middle drivers, A-tier drivers, that sort of thing. This season very much is still like, oh, like you mentioned, after Japan or for Japan, we still don't really know 100%. We know like 99%. It's most likely going to be along the same lines. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm still a bit on the fence about it. And maybe it's just because I need some adjustment to it. I think it's also because I do feel a little bit bad for the casual who would play this because obviously for us, we can get into the maths. I quite like doing all the calculations to figure out exactly what's going to happen. But take China, for instance. A casual's not going to realize why Hadjar got, how much did he get? 10, 11 points and still
Yeah, I
got
had
a
a pretty
negative
good
zero point
weekend.
0.6. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could do a lot of confusion there. So maybe it's one of those things where F1 Fantasy could give out a little bit more information about it, just for anyone who doesn't know a little bit. But yeah, I think it could get interesting for us lot at least.
Yeah, I think for the engaged manager, it does. It will benefit us in the long term, but yeah, I do feel bad for the casual manager. Hopefully, after Japan, we'll have like a kind of settled algorithm kind of thing, and
Mm.
hopefully they post it on the website because they said that it's going to be like a 3 race rolling average, but like you need to be able to click that and figure it out for yourself. You need to explain that to like my little brother that's playing or like my high school buddy that's playing, that kind of thing. Like they're not doing F1 fantasy content at like quarter to 9 on a weekday. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
checking their team a couple hours before the deadline of each Grand Prix and stuff like that. But how about Zach? Let's get into your second overreaction.
So it's kind of still again on the budgeting lines. And mine is now initially I did think a 3 race period we're going to start seeing the budget building teams begin to very much come into front of F1 fantasy teams. But I think even if someone is out there, and there probably is someone out there who got Australia right and China right, we're going to start seeing that budget building team in Japan phenomenal work. I mean, it could be the likes of Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes with drivers who are good on budget already come Japan. And if not for Japan, definitely for Bahrain. And like, yeah, just look at this team that you, and I believe this is a team you can afford right now.
This is my T1 team that has 101.2 million in the bank or something like that. It's
Yeah.
not that much. That's not that much.
And I guarantee
So
there's probably
yeah,
someone out there at the minute after Australia and China who's probably got around 104-ish million. And think what they could do with that. They could easily go for Piastri and then increase, how much is Ocon at the minute? They could potentially increase Hadjar at least up to an Ocon.
yeah, I mean, Hadjar, I mean, if even if they started, like you could have a build with Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes, and maybe you could have had Stroll in there and stuff like that. Like there's a lot
Mm.
of people that could be up 1.2, like 2.4 million if they had some of those really good drivers at the beginning of the season. I mean, this would be a wild card for me again. Unfortunately, you only get one, and I already burned it. So this is probably not what I will be running in Japan. But yeah, like you're saying, like there's already really good teams that can run even better versions of this. Like McLaren and Mercedes are pretty much the A tier constructors that are guaranteed to rise 0.3 million heading to Japan. I think McLaren need to score, they would somehow need to have 3 DNFs or like a disqualification in qualified and another 2 DNS for them to
I was
even
gonna say,
go
after what we
remotely.
saw with Ferrari, I
Oh,
wouldn't put it
yeah,
past
maybe
anyone.
yeah, knock on wood kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully not, especially since we're both McLaren fans. That'd be pretty
Yeah.
disastrous in Japan because I think Japan's supposed to be a pretty good track for them. But yeah, just like, I mean, I like kind of recovered my budget in China, but just like with this, like there's, like you're saying, there's other teams that have started well. Like had a good Australia and then they had a good China. And yeah, they just like they will be crushing it out of the park. And we saw how key that was with the world number one last year, Leapers Frog, who like kind of like build all his budget at the beginning of the season and just was able to run that like double, triple premium driver lineup by the end of the year. So getting the budget right at the beginning is key. And that's what I mean. Our first 3 overreactions have been talking about the budget pretty much. So it really is like that is what it is all about. The second overreaction for me is that Mercedes will be the second best team. I'm repping them tonight a little bit. And Toto Wolff came out today and said after the Chinese Grand Prix that he thinks that they are the second fastest team. And if we go over to F1 Fantasy Tools, a little screenshot from them, we can see that they are the second best constructor right now. Yes, a Ferrari double DSQ will definitely help them in the standings, but they've outscored Red Bull in both weeks, 67-19 in Australia, and then 69-67 in China. They are kind of lagging behind McLaren. I think I mean, it's looking good for the papaya right now, but we'll see how it
Mm.
goes. Russell has been really impressive. Antonelli got away with one last week with that driver of the day, so that helps. Although that doesn't go into the constructors necessarily, but overall, like they might have the third strongest driver pairing on the grid. They're definitely ahead of Red Bull. Even if like Yuki moves up, I still would say that Antonelli and Russell. Where would you put Red Bull versus Mercedes if Sonoda moved up to Red Bull?
It's kind of a cop out from me, but I still think you put Sonoda in that car and he doesn't perform there. I generally do think it's cursed. So I think I would actually put Mercedes above because Antonelli, fair play to him. I didn't actually think Antonelli would be like this good at the start. He's blown me away. So I think I would still put them ahead.
Yeah, and I think I would also. I'm kind of willing to give Antonelli a pass for China. Was a little bit disappointed. I guess I found out after the fact that he suffered damage on like the first lap in China, so he was like kind of struggling because it was like, I mean, I'll give him a pass on Sunday, but not being able to pass Sonoda on Saturday was a little bit
Mm.
like confusing and worrying. But with 3 practice sessions in Japan, he'll get to know the track, he'll get to know the car a lot better over that. I'm hoping that we'll maybe see him like crack another top 5, top 6 kind of thing rather than like the struggles of that. But yeah, with him and Russell, Mercedes look pretty on it. They seem to like have their weekends together. China was hot and they did well. So that narrative about them kind of only running well in the cold might need to get thrown out for 2025, which would be nice as we head into 2026 with the new regulations, which apparently they've like cracked the code. So I guess we'll see how that's going to go next season in F1 Fantasy. But what about your final overreaction, Zach? What do we got going?
Well, this one, I think for a lot of teams, it very much has been a case of Norris versus Piastri. And I think this is going to be the season long battle for at least if you have an 8-year driver in your team. And we should have seen it in China. How well we saw it in Australia as well. How damaging if whoever you pick gets wrong in your team, then you're kind of screwed. So in Australia, if you picked Piastri, instantly there was what? How many points did Piastri get? Around 10 points to Norris's, I believe, around 55. With
Yeah,
the
yeah,
two times
55.
DRS, with the two times DRS, let me do a little bit of quick maths. 90-point difference. And then you head over to China, and realistically, if you didn't have Piastri, I had Norris, and I got extremely lucky. I shouldn't have got that fastest lap. I shouldn't have got quite a few points. Norris was not that good of an asset compared to Piastri, and he should have blown him out of the park. So I think it's going to be one of those things where we have to keep an eye on who looks better throughout the weekend before qualifying and go with whichever one's better. It's going to be such a big swing for your team on points because 80er driver, 2 times DRS boost, you've got to get it right.
Yeah, it's a great point, and like there is a pretty big price difference right now, so I do lean towards going with Piastri while we're trying to get in like all these other budget building kind of guys, and eventually maybe we can move up to Lando. But I mean, yeah, Lando, that was a tough first lap for the Chinese sprint and stuff
Mm,
like that. But yeah, like sometimes you can just tell, like this is why it's not necessary to watch FP1 and FP2 and stuff like that, but I feel like sometimes I'll watch Piastri on a weekend, and on that Friday, that FP1, if he's just like churning off the laps, like click, 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 I'm like, oh, he's on it. But like you can kind of tell. And Lando is still, I would say Lando is still probably the favorite to win the world championship and stuff like that. But he's like a lot more peaky, where I feel like Piastri is just
mm.
like kind of like I wouldn't be surprised if Piastri ends up with like more podiums than Norris at the end of the year, but maybe Norris ends up with more wins. Because as you can see, like us, like Australia, Piastri should have ended up on the podium, and then in the Chinese sprint he was good, and then the Grand Prix was also good. Whereas Lando like still makes these like tiny mental mistakes that can kind of get him in trouble, and you like hear him on the radio sometimes, and it's just like there's something about Lando sometimes that like gives me a little bit more concern than Piastri, but like Norris can easily pull off the fastest lap, and the Lando hive is real. They will give him driver of the day if he
Oh
comes
yeah.
away with a win. So that is something we need to consider as well. So you have Lando in your team right now. Are you thinking, are you going to maybe try and flip to Piastri for Japan, or you just wait until for free practice and stuff like that?
I'm most likely going to be waiting, but it really depends on who blows me out of the water, realistically, because I will sneak peek into it, focusing more on which assets look better for the budget building, even like in longer periods. So I will have a look, even in Japan, on just the Chinese results, because then obviously once Australia's not being used again, it'd be nice to have some of those assets already built in that potentially already look good and then could move up on again. And it depends on like my budgeting for all of that if I had Piastri or Norris. But at the minute, having Norris in my team is quite nice because I can just go, okay, drop Piastri down, and then boom, I've got 6-ish million to play around with, messing about with my cheap drivers.
Yeah, you can make a lot of difference in your F1 fantasy team with that 6
Mm,
million right there. And it is quite nice to just be able to drop down in price. I mean, I don't know if you play Fantasy Premier League. I know a few of us other F1 fantasy
mm.
content creators do, but yeah, like usually if you go with like the most expensive player, you can just drop down so easily and you have all this money to play with the rest of your squad. It's so much more fun to bring in all these other players. So that's where I'm at. My priority right now, I can't get to Lando without totally blowing up my team. So Piastri, I can get 2 and 2 moves. So that's kind of where I'm looking right now, especially we've already mentioned this. Like now that Antonelli is confirmed as an A tier driver, Piastri's ceiling is so much higher. Like he scored so many points this weekend, and it's like be so handy to have that. Whereas like Antonelli, every track is like, oh well, he's a rookie. Like maybe he hasn't raced here all that much. Like Piastri's in his third season now. He has a pretty good hold. I mean, you saw how much he improved from last year in China to
Mm.
this year in China. It was so much better. All right, but getting into my final overreaction here, there will be no more A tier drivers in F1 Fantasy 2025. That's it. Antonelli, he was the last one. I hope you enjoyed that 1 week of budget rising, because look at this list here, Zach. Lawson, Albon,
Oh,
Sainz, Gasly, Stroll, Sonoda, Ocon, Hulkenberg. The only thing I can think of is if Sonoda does move up into that second Red Bull seat, maybe. But that's like because Lawson is what? He's now 16.8 million. He's already fallen 1.2 million. So Sonoda's going to have to rise quite a bit to even get to that A tier asset. And like you were just saying, that seat is cursed. Like Ricardo
mm.
did some weird outback magic on it when he left and just left it there. So no one's been able to break the Danny Rick curse since he's left. And I think that's it. I think we're locked into these are our B tier assets and these are our A tier assets for the F1 fantasy season. Out of this list of B tier drivers on here, is there anyone you think that can rise to the A tier?
Honestly, the only one, and this is like a big shot, it's if Williams all of a sudden are the clear cut ones. Just seeing Albon at 19, he could just about potentially keep that going. However, this is a long stretch for me. I don't think that's going to be it. But out of everyone on that list, I think he's the most likely. But when I say most likely, I'm talking about what, 5%, probably even less.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see here, like I was saying earlier, like we were gonna zoom in on these graphics here. So like, yeah, Alonso needs 64, but he needs to score
Oof.
49 points to avoid another huge fall in price this weekend in Japan. And I mean, like we were talking earlier, like we're a couple of sickos. We're like thinking about F1 fantasy on a random midweek evening instead of just enjoying this spring evenings that are coming about. But like, I can't wait to have Alonso in my team at like 4.8 million for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. But I mean, he also has to keep it on the track. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, out of all these B tier drivers, like, yeah, it's like the gap is so big to 19 million, and Lawson, he's going to have a massive turnaround and then like 3 or 4 good weekends in a row at this point just to even come close to an A tier asset. So I think that's it. I think we're done. I think we're done
Mhm.
with the 7 drivers we have in A tier. Even Antonelli, if he has a bad weekend, like he'll still be 19.0 million for one more weekend and stuff. So maybe there's a world where like Antonelli DNFs in Japan and he goes down for a couple of weeks, he could become an A tier driver again. But I think that's the 7. I think that's it for the 2025 season. But Zach and I just did our overreaction. So I put out a call to the audience. Let us know your spiciest takes for F1 fantasy. And you guys did not disappoint at all. So, Zach, are you ready to kind of go through the commenters' hot takes and see what we can kind of agree with or disagree with here?
Let's give it a go.
Alrighty. First off, we got Victor here saying Stroll will be the strongest tier B asset. Zach, I showed you this one before the show, and I think you almost fell out your chair. So, any words on Lance Stroll being the strongest tier B asset?
Look, honestly, everything in my head is screaming at me, this cannot be right. How could Stroll be the best tier B asset? But to be fair to him, I'll give it to him. He has been brilliant for Australia and China. Now, I am waiting for that. It's got to come around for that Stroll DNF. It's got to come, surely. Which then I think once he has that, he'll then get into the flow of only scoring around 5-ish points. He'll get stuck where his budget is right now. He'll probably decrease some more. I think give it 3-ish races and we'll start seeing what he's actually going to be doing the full season.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, let's just go back to this chart right here. Like, he needs 1 point in Japan to go up another 0.6 million. So I think I'm going to risk it for the biscuit one more week with Lance Stroll. But as you can see, like Albon needs to get higher and higher. Like Stroll will eventually need to score more points to go up a little bit more as well. But yeah, just 1 point to go up 0.6 million. That is fantastic. Second one here is from Mr. Taz. Arriving to the second part of the season with chips available will be one of the main objectives in this championship. This is kind of interesting because we almost ran into this problem last year where a lot of us had the extra DRS boost chip like available for the final 3 sprints. And then like Ferrari threw us off in Austin because they were
Mhm.
good all of a sudden. And then Brazil was a wet race. And then Qatar was like a bad overtaking track. So it's still so early. I have done a chip strategy video where I kind of talked about the earlier part of the season, but like in general, are you still trying to play your limitless chip earlier in the season? Do you think the budget makes it that we can actually maybe wait until Belgium is Miami? Like, what are you thinking regarding chips this year? Are you trying to be patient, or like is it just when the opportunity arises, you're going to just activate it and go?
I still definitely think Limitless is one of the ones for me I would use earlier, and you'll probably be seeing me use it in Miami. 100, I think, and I'm 99% sure on that. But then the others, I do sort of agree, where it is scary. Now, last year, I got caught up in all of that and I used extra DRS in technically, statistically, it seemed like the brilliant one that could happen. Plenty of overtakes. Brazil, it would looked magnificent. I had, I believe I used it in Brazil. I believe if my memory serves me right. Um, but then look what happened at Brazil. Absolute chaos, and then it probably would have been better to use no negative. That is definitely one of them I want to be keeping around me. If you didn't use no negative in Australia, last year I used it in China, and then later down the line I was like, oh, actually, there's been a lot more races now that I should have used it on. And I think I was very focused on sprint race weekend, got to put it out. But then that rain is just so much more. But yeah, overall, I think ones like extra DRS, I still think you need to wait until the second half of the season just because we know where it's probably going to be this exact same scenario where our team's going to be so much better than they are now that it's just so many more points onto offer. And I think it's worth the risk. I do think it is.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I agree with Mr. Taz here. Yeah, I mean, I kind of was giving myself a hard time, like maybe I should have like been more pushy about no negative in Australia. Like maybe that was the play, like 6 rookies, rain, like blah blah blah, like all that stuff. But we've got Monaco, we've got Canada, we've got Brazil coming up. There will be
Mhm.
something like where it's like, okay, like this is crazy, or like maybe you'll have an inactive driver or something. Like I don't know what's going to
Oh
happen
God,
for
yeah.
the final part of the season. So yeah, definitely keep those chips around if you can. Final fix and like autopilot might be kind of a good time to use maybe around Spain when we get these new flexi wing rules and it's like we don't really know what's going to happen. So it might just be good if you can get 2 of your premium drivers in there. Moving over to some other ones here. We've got friend of the show, F1 Fantasy Fuel, talk about Verstappen is a viable asset for Japan. The way he outperformed the car to nearly win the Australian Grand Prix and get a podium in the China Sprint, along with the Red Bull's strength in high-speed corners, which are prominent at Suzuka, means Verstappen will be very much in contention for the win. Verstappen, have you thought about him at all for Japan, Zach? Or is he just kind of off the radar right now because Red Bull's a little off the boil?
Honestly, yeah, I think he's just kind of off my radar. And I do agree. Potentially he could be up there in Japan, but then I can't remember exactly what his points are needed for that big increase. But he's one of the riskier options for the 8-year budget increases. So it also comes down to that where if you just stick with someone like Norris and Piastri, you're getting an easy ride out of Japan, knowing you're going to get that. At Touchwood, if they don't get a DNF. But Verstappen, hey, a differential, why not? But it's definitely not one I would be thinking, oh, 100% is my first thought.
Yeah, I think with it still just being so settled at the beginning of the season right now that like McLaren looks pretty strong. Even like George Russell might be a better bet than Verstappen. Like you have other options. If this was like the last race of the season, I'd be like, go for it, Verstappen, like
Mm.
differential kind of thing. But Verstappen, like he could come flying out the blocks. Red Bull have 2 weeks to kind of get that car back to tip top shape. But we'll see. Can never really doubt Red Bull. They always kind of like seem to turn it around just when you're ready to count them out. Medradista down here says he's got 4 of them. So Zach, pick your favorite out of these. Williams will be the second best constructor pairing. Ferrari will be in a void all season. Oscar will finish less than 50 points away from Lando. And Haas assets will again have the biggest jump in value from where they started the season. Which one is your favorite out of those 4 from Madridista?
Well, I hate to be that guy, but I think it has to be the bottom one purely because I don't think I agree with the other three. Haas,
Ooh.
I do agree. They most probably will have potentially the biggest budget increases just because they were at such a low threshold, and I still think it stands to this point where, especially what we saw in China now, how flip flop it can be, that with them being so low, realistically now, I mean, this is only thinking short term, but now they barely need any points. So it doesn't matter if we come into Japan and then they're a bit rubbish again. But if we know at least that a certain circuit type has a good, then we could use that to our advantage. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think the other three are for me.
So the Haas one is pretty interesting, and you just mentioned how they do at each circuit because from what I heard, like China was resurfaced, and Pirelli was pretty much calling it the smoothest track on the calendar now. And I know Suzuka has also just been resurfaced, but apparently that helped Haas like use their or like lower their ride height to an acceptable level. So China may have flattered Haas. We'll see if the resurfacing at Suzuka also does the same thing. It might be something that we just need to like put in the back of our minds and just like remember track to track, see how that goes. If I'm left with a kind of choice of the last 3, I'm gonna just get really spicy here and just say Ferrari will be in a void all season because,
Oh.
like, McLaren is just right there, a couple of million more than them, maybe like 3 or 4 million more than them at this point after what just happened. But like if Mercedes are cheaper and they've got Russell and Antonelli, like if Russell, Antonelli, Max, Lewis and Charles are all battling for 3 through 6 or 7 every weekend, it could be a track to track thing. And maybe just going with the cheaper option in the Mercedes is maybe like a better long-term play. We'll see how it goes. I mean, Ferrari's going to score a lot of points, and I think they will get this fixed. But right now, I would say that McLaren and Mercedes are like the most put together squads. They seemed like the most cohesive. So maybe not season long, but I'm not entirely sure if Ferrari will be on my radar, at least for the next 3 races while they have this massive double DSQ hanging over their head. So Madridista, I'm going to go with option 2, which I think is the spiciest one that I've seen so far.
Mm.
Even out of our 6 hot takes that we had, Zach, I think that's the spiciest one right there. We got a few more here. Rain Fantasy tuning in. I'm pretty sure he is off his plane back from Melbourne by now. I know he was on like a
Oh my
30-hour
god,
plane
yeah.
ride.
I saw
So,
that as well. I don't know how he's
yeah,
managed that.
maybe he's watching this at like 3 a.m. because he's so jet lagged, but he thinks Hadjar is going to be the worst asset in F1 fantasy this season. And this kind of hurts because I think Hadjar has kind of stolen my heart as the rookie of the season so far. What do you think, Zach? Hadjar, Bortoleto, where are we going? Like the LVP, the least valuable player in F1 fantasy this season?
I just think when you have well, that's the thing. I'm trying to think because I was about to say Saubers, but then also it could get to a point where the Saubers actually aren't crazy bad purely because this is something I'm a little interested to see, but how much Bortoleto can actually physically go more down, which then maybe could make him a decent asset. But then it really is a throw about to see who would be the worst asset. I mean, Hadjar, he is a rookie, so he probably will be DNF heavy. But
But he's
honestly,
rapid.
I think yeah, that's
He's
the thing, isn't
rapid.
it? And that's why I think my worst asset might go to Doohan.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think
Ugh.
Doohan might pip the line there.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you brought up a good point there. Like, if Bortoleto like goes to 4.5 or 4.0 and like can't go any lower, like that's a smash in your team, right? It's like it doesn't matter what he scores. Like okay, I'll just keep having him in there. Like that would enable so much more. FPL underscore discomfort. Kieran here said even Mazepin would be better than Liam Lawson, and V Carb to be at least the 5th highest scoring constructor. I think I did see like a thing that Mazepin what had like his first 3 results were better than Liam Lawson, and like in a Red Bull compared to the Haas when he was there, but. I mean, even that's a little bit mean for me, Kieran. But yeah, VCarb to be at least the 5th highest scoring constructor. What are we feeling there?
Wow, I like how the it says at least as well, because that means he definitely thinks there's room for improvement. I mean, hey, if if Ferrari keep on doing what they're doing, potentially they could be higher than 5th. But I think you might be spot on with 5th. I think Williams came out Australia looking incredible, but I think because of the race strategies that we've seen from VCarb Racing Bulls, um, we haven't really seen exactly what they can do. So I still think to this day that once we get a race where they actually are competent on that side, we're going to see exactly how many points they could get, and then we're going to be like, whoa, okay, they seriously do mean business. So I think he might be dead on with 5th highest.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good shout, actually. I think if every race was just a sprint race, VCarb would easily be in the top 4 constructors because then the pit wall can't mess them up with strategy. Unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case for the F1 calendar in 2025. So, yeah, that's like that strategy calls they've made the last 2 races is just absolutely brutal. Hopefully, they get that fixed. Will that strategy call be for Liam Lawson in their car, or will it still be for Yuki Tsunoda? I guess we're going to find out over the next 7-ish days, but we'll see. I don't know if I've gotten your perspective on this, but how do you think the game would handle Tsunoda and Lawson flip-flopping in the car? Like, what
Oh.
do you think? How do you think the game would handle that?
I'm hoping that they would just do a complete swap of just give Yuki Lawson's price and give Lawson Sonoda's price. Purely because again, I love Yuki Tsunoda, and I was very much on team he should have been in Red Bull in the first place. But from what I've seen from Lawson, I also wasn't a Lawson hater. He's not bad, and it scares me if he can be 20th. I don't think Sonoda's going to be any different. Maybe 19th, 18th, but that's still not good enough. So I hope they just do a complete flip. But even if that's the case, I'd still be a little bit worried about Sonoda around 16, 17 million.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. I think what I'm thinking they'll do, and I think Rob, Formula Fantasy Hub, said earlier
Mhm.
today on his team selection video is probably what I think would be the most sensible option. Not entirely sure if that means the game will do that, but they would deactivate Yuki and Lawson at their current, and then they'd flip them so that people aren't getting like a 9 million price increase with their Yuki
Oh, of
Tsunoda
course,
asset.
yeah.
So they would like deactivate Yuki and they'd make him a new driver as Red Bull, and then it would deactivate Lawson and make him a new driver as RB. Now, I'm not sure how like into the weeds the game can be, but I would hope that those managers that had Yuki or Lawson would get a free transfer. That didn't necessarily happen last year, like when Logan Sargent was deactivated, when Kevin Magnussen was sick or banned for a race last season. So if you have Sonoda or Lawson right now in your team, you may have to just have that in the back of your head as well, that you might have to use an extra free transfer to remove an inactive driver if this swap ever does happen. We've been on VCarb and we're going to keep talking about them. These are the final two overreactions. Mike F says at Yank the Mic, avoid RB as this, or this is Red Bull, as despite having a good car, they've been terrible at. Oh, this is Racing Bulls. Sorry. Avoid Red Bull or Racing Bulls, as despite having a good car, they have been terrible at strategy, not only this season, but all of last year. And then Damo says, VCarb have just enough pace to score a podium in 2025 if the
Whoa.
strategist pulls their butts and a lot else falls in favor. So yeah, thank you everybody for these hot takes. Zach, we're still, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of takes about Racing Bulls. Where are we going with these hot takes? What are you thinking?
Well, it's sort of a cop out from me, but I sort of agree with both in like certain ways because they are both technically correct. So it's really hard to pick which one I would agree with more. I think I'd have to go with Mike just because from what we've seen so far, they have been screwing up their strategies. So it's going to be a little bit risky having them. But again, I said this a few minutes ago. I do think they will be able to get up to fifth in points wise. So it's sort of like a double edged sword. Both of them probably, I think both of them will probably happen simultaneously.
I think I will join you kind of on the cop out fence sitting area. And I said that maybe V Carb can get a podium in a sprint over a Grand Prix length. I just don't think the car could have it against these top four teams, but you never know. Something crazy could happen in a sprint. Like we could have a massive pile up on like lap 11 of a track that's not super easy to overtake, and then just safety car it to the end, and we get Isaac Hadjar on the podium in his first season in F1. But like I was saying, thank you everyone for all of your overreactions, your hot takes. It has been super fun to break these down. Zach, thank you for coming on F1 Fantasy Pole Position. I really appreciate it. The final piece of the fantasy formula puzzle has been solved. So I will have to go back into the Rolodex rotation and see which one of you can come back on the show next. Just let people know one more time where they can find you.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being on the channel. And yeah, so you can literally find Zach GP. I'll be under on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. I believe that's all of them. And I will be talking. Well, mainly I use Twitter to do any of those. I like doing those polls before some race weekends. On my YouTube channel, I'm doing quite a little bit of everything at the minute. I've got my F1 fantasy stuff. However, I also like to do everything you need to know videos before race weekends, historic videos, what if scenarios. So if that is anything that anyone likes, feel free to come and join me over on the Zach GP channel. Oh, and of course, I need to make sure I remember, and FanAmp. That will be where my preview shows are for F1 Fantasy. And obviously, that's the whole team. Oh, that's been great fun so far over there.
Yeah, you guys have been crushing it so far in the 2025 season. I've seen your little explaining chips videos. Those are pretty nice as well. So if you want some little like quick burst advice for F1 fans, you should definitely go check those out. But yeah, if you want to learn more about F1, Zach's channel is fantastic. Like historical stuff, what if stuff. I mean, you did a video earlier this season about like Sonoda kind of getting himself in trouble. Like, does he have a seat
Mm,
next year? We don't even know what's going on. So he has something to go there. But I want to thank Zach for coming on the channel. I want to thank you guys for putting all the overreactions in there. It has been super fun to do this episode. Zach, I will definitely be dragging you back on here at some point. But once
good
again,
stuff.
thanks. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, been super fun. Great conversation. Hopefully, I haven't eaten too much into your evening. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, everyone. And I will talk to you next time.